You're listening to The Christopher Scott Show. Here's Chris.
What do they say? The only constant is change. I know, it's like an old kind of cliche. Probably heard it a million times. But here's the thing. I remember when I was a kid, back in the 70s and the early 80s, and all the talk about technology all revolved around the year 2000. That somehow come 2000, everything was going to be different. We were going to be living in a different world. And back then, it was kind of funny that was the talk because we were using like the Commodore VIC-20 computer. Atari was the big thing. You know, they had these pixelated games. Cable TV was just coming around. The cell phones back then were the Don Johnson style car phones, these giant boxes that you held up to your ear and only rich people could have them. And a lot of things have changed since then. Of course, 2000 came in. I remember the whole Y2K thing, that computers were going to wipe out the world. And that was a lot of the talk that, computers are going to take over everything. Now, computers really aren't doing anything any different than they were in the 80s. You look at with the Windows version today, what is it, Windows 10, compared to like Windows 98 or even the Mac operating system, there's not really a whole lot that's changed. Microsoft Word, Excel, the whole Office suite, not a lot is a whole different. You know, you can share on the web, there's some different features, but materially speaking, there really hasn't been a change there. And so now the talk is all with artificial intelligence, that artificial intelligence is going to take over the world. So there's always all these crazy theories about all that. All I know is that the prediction in the 70s was that we were going to be living like the Jetsons. They were going to have all these robots running around, and the big thing was they're going to be flying in these little flying saucers. Well, that's not even in the cards anymore. I guess there's some goofy stuff being worked on, but nothing like we talked about back then. But there's still some really cool stuff going on. If you follow it at all, there's really some amazing technology. I think we've moved beyond the software app age. I talked earlier this week about some of the stuff that the military is looking at. And, you know, the military drives a lot of tech, by the way, always has. There's a lot of materials and different things like GPS. You know, that originated with the military. That was something that the military develops, and they have to use maps and get lost and navigate with compasses. It was huge for the military. It's become huge for the civilian population as well, but that started with the military. So the military pushes a lot of tech that ends up in the civilian hands and gets used for civilian purposes. But now the military is looking at self-driving convoys, which would be huge in the military business, that they could, you know, send into combat these self-driving convoys instead of risking people's lives. And logistics is a huge issue for the military. So having the ability to move stuff robotically, if you will, would be huge. It would be a massive change for the military. It'd be a great tool that they'd be able to use, give a huge advantage to units on the battlefield. And then they're also looking at, the Marine Corps wants these lightweight portable kamikaze drones. And this whole issue of machines killing people has sparked this whole other debate. Should it be allowed? And what happens with facial recognition and artificial intelligence? So right now, they're looking at this drone that they could carry around in a backpack. It could carry an artillery round. They could send this thing up. It could fly around for up to 2 hours. Presumably it would have a camera on it. The Marines in the field could use the camera on the drone to acquire the target, see what they were going to drop this small bomb on. Not really a small bomb if you know what a 155 millimeter howitzer round is capable of doing. They'd have this drone flying around, could just drop these things anywhere without an artillery battery. Infantry units could carry them in their backpacks. It's kind of crazy. But what happens when those same drones are deployed, say, in like a whole fleet of these things, and they have artificial intelligence and facial recognition, that they can just program these things, you know, go get Saddam Hussein or whoever? Well, on one hand, I guess if you're talking about somebody like Saddam Hussein, then, it becomes a very useful tool. But what happens when it gets used for other nefarious purposes, such as some of the stuff that our FBI is currently doing to the President of the United States. But I don't want to get off topic with politics right now. I just want to talk about technology. But you can check out the show that I did on Monday where I talk about some of the stuff going on in the military. But if you follow what's going on in the tech areas, it's not just one area that we're talking about. It's not like there's these vast changes in, say, transportation or the medical field or any other single field. It's all of it. It's all changing very rapidly. There was this software implemented in China, this facial recognition to find criminals in crowds. And so when I talk about the idea of that being attached to a drone, I don't know if it's that far off. You know, if they can put the two together, they have the drones. I guess they haven't been tested yet. They'll figure that out. That's easy. They've got the facial recognition figured out. I'll tell you a little more about that story. They got robots building skyscrapers. This I thought was pretty cool too. And you think about what it takes to build a skyscraper. And I don't know, maybe you never thought about it. I'm into building stuff, so I kind of follow this kind of thing. But basically to build a skyscraper, you know, you've got to bring this material in. It's all hoisted up with these cranes that kind of build themselves as they build the building up. And then when you're done the building, you have this giant crane up at the top that you got to lower down. Well, now they're looking at robots that would be able to do this, that these things would just kind of scan around the building and put the whole building together from these small robots. You wouldn't have any workers at all, no construction workers doing that work. And here's another one that's interesting and kind of an indication of how this technology can create jobs. They now have drone guns for police to keep out other drones. So they're launching these drones as like a defense against other drones. Kind of fascinating when you think about it. And then there's this miniature robot that miniature robot bee that they're developing to send to Mars. And so the idea is that they would send like this huge fleet of these miniature robot bees to go explore Mars. It's fascinating when you think about it. And 3D printing, maybe you've heard me talk about that before. 3D printing, I think, for whatever reason, has been kind of developing slowly. And I guess that's a function of the materials, not the computing ability. But they've done some tests where they're 3D printing houses, which is kind of cool too. They got robots now that they're combining with artificial intelligence that can perform science experiments. That's fascinating. That you're going to have robots sitting there doing, have this whole lab where they can test and create different things. Freaky, right? And then this one's really simple. I don't know why this hasn't taken off more. Robots that can deliver food. There's probably a ton of different uses for that. And this one I really like too. And this is not really new, but they've just been perfecting it and making it a little more widespread. And that's exoskeleton systems for endurance and helping people with disabilities and lift things and what have you. All kinds of different systems where you kind of attach the robot to a human. And I'm not even scratching the surface with all this. Not even close. I mean, there's just a couple things that I pulled out that I thought sounded kind of cool. But I think the big shift here is that this isn't apps or software or just computers that we're talking about. This is real tech stuff that's going on, making lives better and easier, like a whole new class of machines. And I was thinking about this, and I guess when you really get down to it, all this technology stuff is either to replicate what humans already do, to make it automated, or that humans don't have to exert any effort, or to do what humans do, but to do it better, right? That's really what the technology comes down to when you think about it. Now, when you talk about this stuff, there's people that get freaked out by some of this stuff. There's a guy in China that was arrested after facial recognition picked the guy out of a crowd of 50,000 people. Some people get a little nervous about that idea, right? That they can use a camera and software to pick somebody out of a crowd of 50,000 people. That's some serious technology right there. And if you think about the ramifications of that, of course there's lots of good uses of it. But, it's also kind of weird. When you think about an out of control government that starts targeting people, right? Then you say, well, wait a minute. What happens when it gets in the wrong hands? I'll tell you one thing, you'd have to be a smarter criminal. I could be able to just walk around with your face hanging out and nobody knows who you are. We're going to have to go back to the days of ski masks and paper bags over your head. You remember when that was going on? People robbing banks with ski masks or paper bags pulled over their head. First of all, you can't even get paper bags anymore. But you don't hear too much about that. You don't really hear too much about bank robberies anymore. I guess I don't know, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I'm sure it still happens. It's not even big news anymore. I don't hear about any good big bank heists anymore. I guess the cops have gotten too good. Maybe it's the technology that's caught up with them. But either way, it's getting better. So the criminals are going to have to get better. And guess what? It's not just the good guys that are using technology. The bad guys, they keep finding new ways of using technology. There's no easy way to stop them. Listen to this one. According to Defense One, I guess they're like this police contractor. But according to Defense One, FBI agents were staking out this unfolding situation, right, where there's something going on. And all of a sudden they were surrounded by all these drones that they were weaving and darting around the team. Imagine if you're a cop or an FBI agent, you're doing this raid or whatever, and all of a sudden all these drones are buzzing around. Let alone the fact that if they develop these Mars bees things, they're going to be microscopic or very small, not microscopic. You know what I'm saying? And anyway, it happened. These FBI agents are out doing this raid. These criminals sent these drones in to monitor what they were doing. One of the agents said that it presented some challenges. I guess so. The criminals are watching everything they did. And so not only did these drones interfere physically with the operation because they're buzzing around, but they're also filming what was going on, uploading the footage to YouTube so that I guess other gang members could watch and see what was going on, not to mention the public. I don't know. Maybe there's a way they could just launch automatic drones that belong to the police to monitor these things. Maybe it would do away with some of the problems we have. I don't know. But look, it goes both ways. You got the good guys using it. You got the bad guys using it. But it's creating some issues. They're talking about drones being used to fly contraband into prisons, sometimes attaching explosive devices. And this is the big one that I've been concerned about, especially when you talk about the Marine Corps already developing the technology where you could have a drone that could have a howitzer round attached to it. When criminals and terrorists start learning how to use that technology, guess what? It's going to create a whole new security threat. It probably already has on some level, right? Back in the day, if you were going to commit a crime, you'd set up a lookout. Now you could fly up a couple of drones and see wild distances. So I don't know. You get the military has this technology that can jam the communication between the drone and the operator, I guess. But it hasn't really been tested in populated areas, and they're worried about the disruption to cell phone towers. So it's not going to be super easy to just jam these things. What are they going to do? And then once they have these drones that can fly on their own using artificial intelligence, they're saying that the jamming techniques won't even work. So I don't know. They're saying that they have to look into training drone hunting eagles. That's crazy. So you see what I'm saying? It's going to open up this whole new field. Not only are you going to have the drone development itself and people to maintain and use these things, but then you have to have people to guard against them too. And that's the fix for this. It's called the drone gun. They basically have this launcher that they launch these anti-drone drones. So everybody that has a drone, the cops are going to have an anti-drone. I think you're going to see it affect security of buildings and things like that too. Why wouldn't a place like, say, Trump Tower, for example, right? If there's a threat of drones flying into the building or attacking the building, think of the damage it could cause. If you took these drones with a howitzer round on it and flew 10 or 20 of those into Trump Tower, I don't even want to call this out. I'm going to get myself in trouble. Any big building, right? It creates a security threat. So why wouldn't the owners of those properties then want to employ counter security? It's getting crazy, right? And we haven't even begun with this technology. Not even close. You know, they haven't figured out yet how to get them to fly completely on their own. They haven't attached the facial recognition. But I'll tell you, it's going to get out of hand quick once it starts to take off. And you know how this stuff goes. Look at how computers develop. Look, what was it, 25, 30 years ago, we had this clunky computer hooked up to a black and white TV running off a cassette player. That was literally my first computer. And now I have something in the palm of my hand that, you know, is like, I don't know, 10 times more capable than what they used to launch the space shuttle. Crazy when you think about that. So I'm sure that the rest of this technology is going to pile on just as fast. But there's other stuff that's not all this kind of James Bond theme. Japanese companies are using robots to build their skyscrapers. I thought this was fascinating. No workers, right? Japan has a shortage of labor. They got a labor shortage problem, and it's only getting worse. So what they did is they started developing machines to do the work. I guess there's a lot of need for construction there. And so they're using artificial intelligence and drones that they're using to map and control the construction sites. And then they're bringing in the robots. There's a company there that's putting a small amount of labor on the robots, you know, that they're using to weld beams, move supplies, install ceiling panels. If you ever installed ceiling panels in a commercial project, by the way, you know how much every one of those tiles has to be put in place. You get a robot to do that, and you just took a lot of man hours out of the equation. Fascinating. Absolutely incredible. Now, they're saying that right now, they're using it for about 1% of the total labor used in a high-rise project. I'm going to say the workers probably welcome it, right? They don't have to do some of the dirty work, some of the heavy lifting, whatever the case might be. I don't know that anybody wakes up in the morning gets too excited about installing ceiling panels, so they might be happy to have a robot do that kind of stuff. But it's been challenging, they're saying, too. Some of this has been testing. You know, it's a very unpredictable environment with construction, and they're having difficulties automating all that. And, you know, there's safety issues and all that. But they're going to work through it. This is going to be like the Star Wars thing. What was it in Star Wars? The robots were building the planet. I don't know the names of all that stuff. But imagine you're driving down the street and you see these robots working, building a building. Would that not freak you out? Like if you saw no humans there and you drive by in the morning and you see the robots working and you drive by in the afternoon and there's like a piece of the building is built? Crazy, right? And it's not just skyscrapers. There have been these tests to print these 3D houses. I love 3D printing technology. I'll tell you why. I think we're going to get into an era where you're going to be able to go on Amazon and buy the pattern and print whatever it is that you want or need. And that's going to be pretty cool. It'll open up its own problems. You know, when people can print guns, for example, or knives or whatever other heinous stuff that they think they're going to do. People always seem to find a way to get in trouble. But for right now, the big thing is, now, and by the way, there's been crazy advancements with 3D printing for prosthetics. I have a buddy of mine that he makes prosthetics, and they have their own 3D printer in-house. So the way it used to work, if they wanted to build a limb for somebody, they had to cast them, create a mold, send that out to the place that made these things, and there was a ton of labor that went into making it. And then they'd ship this thing back, and they'd have to do some fitting, and it would need some adjustments. They'd have to send it back, and it could take months to go back and forth with all this. Now, they bring you in, they scan you with an iPad, send it off to the 3D printer, and I don't know if it's the same day. I don't know exactly how fast it is, but pretty much instantaneously, boom, they've got the new limb for the person. Crazy. Now they want to do it with houses. They've used these giant printers to print with plastic and concrete. This most recent test, they did it with both. They basically printed this plastic shell that created the form and then filled it with concrete for strength. Amazing. And I'll tell you, if they can dial all this in, it's going to be huge, right? Even if they could just create the shell for the building, and I'm sure it'll get more sophisticated. Like when you think about printing a house, I mean, how are you going to print? You're not going to print the appliances, right? You're not going to print the kitchen cabinets and the kitchen sink more than likely. I don't know. I'm just saying that to me, it seems like that's how it would go. But even if they could just create the shell, the roof, and the walls, it would be a huge advancement in all this. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that carpenters used hammers, and now they're using nail guns. If you look at the speed that a house goes up today compared to 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, it's crazy. There's builders out there regularly building houses in 90 days, where it used to take a year. It'd be a year-long process. Now, boom, 90 days, they're knocking them out. And, if you've seen some of the stuff on TV, they could do it even faster. A lot of that's due to automation and the better tools. So just imagine if they could do it with a 3D printer. I'll tell you what I'm saying. Pretty soon, they're not going to have carpenters. They're going to just pull up a machine and print the thing. There was a time back in the day that you could order mail-order house kits from Sears. I'm not making this up. It's a fact. They had these house kits that you could buy, and they would bring them in. I guess it was like a prefab kind of thing, and they would bring them in and set them up. You'd buy it right through the Sears catalog. I'll bet before you know it that you're going to be able to order houses off of Amazon and just print it yourself. I'll bet you anything. I'll say, I don't know, I'm going to take a wild guess, maybe within 10 years, as soon as they can perfect the right materials technology, that's going to be the trick, that they can put together the right materials, that they can bring it all together and make it so that it's strong enough and, it's proper for a house and the whole thing works out the way it should. But here's another cool use of robots, delivering food. And this is so simple that I don't know why it hasn't been used a little more widespread. They have these little self-propelled programmable carts. I can't believe this isn't mainstream yet, because it would, I don't know, there's so many places where they could utilize this. Hotels, prisons, hospitals. Think of all these people running around, pushing carts around, delivering food. Imagine if they could just do it with this self-propelled cart. And I'll tell you what, if they could add that, this is a crazy idea I had a while ago. I don't know why they don't have a machine yet that basically prints pizzas. Now, hear me out for a second. I'm going to just squeeze it out in the form of goo and have it come out as a pizza. I guess that would be one way of doing it. But I don't know why. If you know how a pizza's made, basically the dough gets flattened out. I would think that could be done with a machine. Then the sauce is laid down. You could spray that on, and then a machine that would just come along with an agitator and drop the different ingredients on whatever you programmed it in there for. How much time gets spent making pizzas in this country? And I've said the same thing with drinks. I don't know why we have bartenders anymore. They have this technology. At my gym, they offer these smoothies, and you go in there, and they kind of push a button. They got to scoop some stuff in, that they have to add some powders or whatever. But basically, they push a button, all the different liquid ingredients, the base and everything comes in automatically through the machine. So if you could combine all that with this, self-delivery feature, I think you'd have a winner. I don't know. What am I to decide? But, if you think about the jobs that all these machines are going to replace, it's huge. Think about some of the things just right now that are in the works. Talking about wiping out driving, having a big impact on construction, a big impact on food service. You just wiped out like half the jobs with all that. And that's what has some people calling for a guaranteed basic income. And I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow, what I think the real issue is and what some of the talk is about all that. If you're one of those people that thinks that technology is affecting jobs and people aren't going to have anything to do, tune into that tomorrow. I'm going to go through that a little bit more. But they also have these robots. This is crazy fascinating to me. They have these robots that can do science experiments. When you think about this, combined with artificial intelligence, the possibilities are endless. You take and combine the technologies and think about how it's all going to grow. This is, I think, part of the reason why they say it grows exponentially the way it does. You're going to be able to set up these robots and say, hey, I want a better material for 3D printing houses. And I'm sure you're going to have to put in some different criteria. And the robots are going to be able to sit there and do these experiments and work out the best solutions. When you think about how much faster that's going to allow testing and how much more complicated it could get. Because instead of, hiring a team of scientists, 2, 3, 10, 20, you just put 100 robots on it that are going to work 24 hours a day. They're going to have computer brains. They're going to be able to do stuff that's more complicated. Imagine what this will mean for human cloning, by the way. Something else that freaks people out. I'm not getting into that whole topic today. But another thing going on, there's a team of Japanese and American engineers that's hoping to send a team of drones to Mars. And they're modeling these things after bees. They're called Mars bees. They're pretty cool looking, actually. And they want to use this swarm to go explore Mars. And I was thinking about this. I don't know why they wouldn't use the same technology right here on Earth. Why not? And you send it to places like Antarctica, and you could go into places where people don't like to go because of whether it's living conditions or violence or whatever the case might be, or places that aren't very suitable for human habitat. They could go explore all that. Crazy. You could monitor things in ways we could never do it before. Kind of insane when you think about all that. And this isn't exactly new, but it's growing, and some of the possibilities are incredible. I remember talking about this quite a while ago. I'm talking about robot exoskeletons that you can wear, like robotic things that you can put on. Now, the story that I did a while ago was about, I want to say it was a Marine captain, double amputee, got these robotic legs, and he was able to walk again and basically live a normal life. But imagine that you could just, if you needed more arm strength, that you could just attach this thing to your arm. They have one right now that they're developing for skiing, which I tell you, if you're pushing 50 like I am, the idea of strapping on some bionic legs for skiing is very attractive. I would absolutely want to do that. That sounds great to me. Imagine what it would do for mountain climbing. They already have some that are designed for lifting, like for warehouse workers and stuff like that. I don't know. It's going to turn us into superhumans. It could be fascinating. Hey, thanks for listening today. If you'd like to support the podcast, the best way you can do that is to like, comment, and share, or better yet, leave a review so that it'll reach more people. And remember, attitude, ambition, and character are your most valuable assets. Those things don't go out of style. There's no technology that's going to replace that. All right, so in all areas of your life, avoid temptation, always do what's right, and always do your best. It's the key to self-discipline, confidence, and self-respect. And that's the key to a great life. Not a robot, not artificial intelligence, you and you.